Okay, my next build is going to be this kit, Canada's Pride and Chagrin. Hitting a little close to home, this is the legendary Canadian CF-105, the Avro Arrow. This was a plane that was designed over here starting in the 50s, and on October 4th, 1957, it was rolled out to the public. A beautiful looking plane with, again, a lot of promise. And it was the same, actually rolled out the same day that Sputnik was launched. So, there was some fortuitous timing there too, perhaps. But all that came to a close on Black Friday, 20 February 1959, when the Prime Minister at the time, the Diefenbaker, rose in the House of Commons and canceled the program, shocking a lot of people. And, basically not only canning the project, but then ordering that everything be destroyed. The planes that they were testing at the time, I think there were 5 that they had, various stages of readiness, and there was still like some engine development because they had one aircraft engine, but they were designing another one, a better one, and this was supposed to be potentially a Mach 2 plane if everything worked out. But again, since that time, when everything was destroyed, like some parts, thankfully people kept a few items stashed away that weren't destroyed, but effectively it was destroyed. And actually in a local museum here in Ottawa, there are still a few parts that you can see, like the front fuselage and things like that, but very, very little was left. And ever since then, it was mired in conspiracy theories and indignation. And again, it's just a sad story of this aircraft. And as a matter of fact, you can. There was a Canadian TV miniseries that you can probably catch called The Arrow, which pretty much gets the essence of everything that happened more or less correctly. A little artistic liberties were taken, but it's quite a good TV series, or miniseries, and I actually reviewed it on one of my blogs a few years ago. So I'll put the link for that review also in the notes for this video. But now let's talk about the kit itself. It's made by what was a Canadian company at the time, Hobby Craft, but it's not not a good reputation for the company. A few not the best kits around. People used to call it hobby crap at times. Anyhow, I wanted one for a long time and let a few friends know over here that this was kind of like on my bucket list, a holy grail kit. And every now and then you'd see them on sale. They are rare, but they are on sale. But they're so sought after that they usually come with high prices. I've seen prices well over 200, or at least the asking price, well over $200. And the story about this kit over here is a good friend. I sent him on. I found something that he would be interested in buying from some seller in the South Shore of Montreal. And I knew the seller was also selling this kit, but it was more than I was willing to pay, so I didn't bother with it. But when this other friend went to pick up the item that he wanted, he told me about the kit, and I said, yeah, I know about it. And he actually, bargained the price down a little bit, but I still was hesitant, and I said, no, I'll pass. But being the good friend that he is, he bought it for me and gifted it to me, and I've been, very appreciative and thankful ever since. And now it's time to build this kit. So thanks, Steve, for getting it for me. And let's take a look at the kit itself. Now, I took a quick peek in here. It's a fairly, again, this is not the most sophisticated company. They've had a few reissues of this kit. And as far as I can discern, when this particular kit came out, one thing they added was a new decal set. And I can see that there may be problems using this decal set. It's still quite old, but I'll see what I can do, and hopefully at least I can use the major ones over here. It's hard to see. I see some little creases in there. Anyhow, again, the kit is quite simple. It's a 1/72 scale. You can see the wingspan because it was a fairly large aircraft, to be honest. And those are the wings, and this is the fuselage here. But there's not much in terms of actual parts. As you can see, it's basically the smaller parts are all on this sprue over here, this tree. And a simple canopy that will require some kind of odd masking because, as you can see, there's kind of curved contours around the back of that canopy. It's not like a full canopy that goes all the way. As a matter of fact, this aircraft, the way it was designed, this splits down the middle and it opens up like that. So anyhow, I'm gonna see what I can do my best with it, try to make something decent, and let's start. As you can see, I'm well on my way into the build. There are not that many parts. I mean, not that few, but not that many either. As a matter of fact, these are all the parts. First thing I want to say about it is there's a lot of sanding to be done if you want to be as precise as possible. One of the main things that I find I have to do on almost every part is the juncture. When they have the mold and they got the two pieces, like in the middle over here, you'll see unevenness. So there's a lot of that sanding going along for that stuff. And also there's a lot of sanding that I've done and putting on this part here where there's a few pieces already glued together. And that's because it's hard to determine, I had to use reference photos to see where's a real seam on the plane as opposed to a seam that's not supposed to be there. And of course, there's the usual things like there's, the mold, those dings where recessed mold lines because it sinks in and things like that. So unfortunately, on the engines protruding over here, normally I'd keep that separate because this is all gray over here or black or whatever. But in this case, this piece over here, it's one fine, continuous piece. So I wanted to sand that in. So I ended up gluing that piece in, and I'll be masking that off later. Other than, a lot of sanding and things like that, it's not that bad a kit. Again, not much detail in some areas, but other areas there is some details. Now I want to talk about these over here. So these wings are two parts, the top and the bottom. This is the wheel well. And what happens is this piece slides right in. Now what I want to say about this hole over here, basically there's a lot of detail. Like you can see the image of the wheels as they would be folded in. That's part of that mold over there, and I want to keep that. So I went ahead and I primed that piece there, and I painted it off already, and I put the panel line accent so you can really see those lines, which is nice. But then I noticed this piece over here, when you put it on top, it doesn't close off on all those areas. They're not glued. There's a huge gap all the way around. So this thing here, this foil that I put, you can actually slide it around. But I did a trial to see if I put the foil, if I can take it off easily. And basically each of these have two pieces of foil with an edge that I can pull off, and that'll come right out. So it'll make it a little easier on the paint job, because now I can just prime the outer coat, the body itself, and not worry about that. I'll retain all the work I've done in there. You can see also that there's you can see how I can slide it over here. Now there are some areas where there's little points where the glue points, if you want to call it that. So what I did is, as I put the foil, I put cut around those little glue points. And what I'll probably put is a piece of tape over here so that this doesn't slide, at least those two pieces together, when I'm painting it, that accidentally open them up. But I'll be careful, and I should be okay with that. Other than that, like I said, it's coming along nicely. Started working on the pilots. We all love painting these little 1/72 scale pilots. And the inner cockpit over here, and I've started building the wheels, the landing gear, and things like that. So coming along. Still a lot of work to do, but so far it looks okay. I think if everything goes well with the build, I'll have a really nice aircraft after I'm done. Okay, unlike the Avro itself, we are flying along on this build here. As you can see, I've built the cockpit. I spent quite a lot of time trying to do the best job possible. And again, to be fair, the kit isn't as bad as I feared it would be. Most of the parts fit really, really nicely. I did put a lot of weight in the front over here, and I actually thought I put too much. I think this whole thing weighs 26 grams, which is a lot for such a small piece. But I'm glad I did, because now that I have most of the back section built over here, it is really, heavy on the back over here with all the parts, because again, this is 2 layers and they're big, large pieces. And if this is the wheel section over here, you can see it's really super back heavy. I'm even wondering if I've have enough weight on that front to have it on the weight on wheels, which is what I want to do when I have it displayed. But it's progressing nicely. One thing that's given me a lot of problems is the windows over here on the cockpit, the windshield. And again, it's not quite formed the way it should be if you look at the profile, although the profile has changed for the airplane for different models slightly. It's not really quite correct. And more importantly, the lines for the front window, it's kind of like a teardrop. It's incorrect on this piece. So I did the best I could to actually get that contour. Actually, I tried something different. I took my Tamiya masking and I tried to pop a circle with this to see if it was big enough, but it wasn't. So I used liquid mask to try to get that circle, semicircle off on the one end over here for the teardrop shape. And I didn't leave the line in the middle. I'm just gonna airbrush that in afterwards. So the best I can do. It's not perfect. The funny thing is, in the aircraft itself, if you look at it, like the rear pilot or whatever, the real co-pilot, he can't see anything, right? The way this is shown, that forward pilot is blocking everything. But at least we'll be able to see a bit in that window, and you barely will see him. So it's as good as I can do, and that's the way the plane, that's the way it's made. The only other thing I want to mention is when I was doing the build, I noticed that this side over here was a little skewed when I put on the wings. As far as I know, they're where they should be. But I noticed there was a very small gap here and a large gap here. Now, these are flaps supposed to be going up and down. But what I've done to remedy that, and I'm going to be doing some more, is I'm going to just putty that up completely and just make a little seam line crack with, gouge it out, and then use a panel line accent to say, like, there's a gap in here. Because if not, it would look too different. One larger gap than the other side. Aside from that, everything else seems to be fitting quite well. And again, this is it. There's still a lot of work to do, mind you, because I got to do, interior paint, the metallic paints on the inside of the wheel wells over here. And again, paint all the rest white. And then I've got a few options in terms of, wingtip colors and things like that, because there were different variances between which of the, 5 planes that were built. Some have, more black than orange and so on and so forth. But all that's going to be done only airbrushing once it's all built. So I hope we can progress with that fairly quickly. The only thing I also wanted to mention is I do have a book on the Avro. This is one of them, Storms of Controversy, obviously. And this Palmiro Campagna guy, he's actually a local guy, an ex-D&D, somebody who worked at D&D for many, many years. And he's written a few books, and he, researched and this continues, as far as I know, to research, everything he can about the aircraft, and try to find pieces where, they're still available. And I believe he's actually found a few during his research. Anyhow, I have not read it. I hope to do so one day. I was hoping to actually read it as I build this, but I've been concentrating on the build itself, so I haven't had time to read it. So just want to say that there are a lot of books out there, many books, by him and other people. So there's a lot of research material if you're interested. And again, there's, documentaries and such on YouTube and other places. I'll try to put a link to 1 or 2 in my notes if I can. So let's continue with this build. Okay, so we're at the putty sand phase. The ship is coming along really, really nice. It's just that I'm trying to, do as good a job as I can. So a lot of these little um, seam lines I'm trying to get rid of where now that I've put the cockpit and the air intakes over here, and it's coming along nicely. Had a lot of problems trying to get this just right, and it's still not perfect, but it's about as good as it's going to get. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to sand and scribe these lines over here. I'm just trying to make sure that I have enough of a scribe so that when I go put the panel line accents, these lines will pop out. So still a little more sanding to do, but very close now to the point where I can start painting this thing, or priming and painting. And one of the last things I've got to decide is if I want to glue this first and then mask it for the painting, because there's different colors along the line over here, and or if I want to keep it separate and just glue it on later on, although there's going to be like one seam line that shouldn't be there if I do that. So I'll have to think about that a little bit more. And then the last thing to do is to decide which one of the planes I want to build. Again, these the 201 to 205, they have had different schemes. And even if you look online, like you'll see the 201, when it was first rolled out, this wasn't painted over here black, and then later on this was painted. So there's a lot of choices in terms of which paint scheme to use for the different planes that they made, the five, and even at what stage they were in when I can make this an early stage or a later stage. But I'm really enjoying this, although it's a lot of work. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to be patriotic. So next update, we'll hopefully have it painted. Okay, so having completed the putty sand phase, we've now completed the prime sand putty phase for this aircraft, and it's looking good. Two things I want to mention for people who are building the kit. Number one, if you'll see, the needle nose over here is now glued where I'd already painted it, thinking that I could have the two separate different colored parts and just glue them later on together and have that nice seam in the middle. But as it so happens with this kit, the diameter of the base of the needle is much bigger than the one on the aircraft itself. So basically I just glued it on so that I can sand it down and get a perfect match, and I'll have to mask it later on. Now one other thing about the kit, which is something they could have fixed, is if you look at the sides of these intakes over here, there's the gap between the intake and the aircraft, but also on the bottom over here, this juts out a bit. Now these are hollow pieces, so as you can see right now, there's these huge open areas, open gaps that could have been closed, and had I noticed earlier, I would have closed them off prior to gluing this. Something that you can't really do at this point, but if you're building the kit, you probably want to do that and make it a little bit slightly better. I've with the priming done, I can't really see if I've masked off with the tape and the fluid the area for the cockpit windows. It's one of those things you'll really only know once you peel it off, so I'll have to see after the paint. And there's these two little side windows, little itty-bitty squares, to be honest, that's on the aircraft, that I masked them off so that a little more accuracy with the kit. So the next phase is getting on with the painting. Okay, so the painting is complete. It was a tedious process, masking off certain areas to get, just the right look. And again, I had to choose what look I wanted, and there were so many variants that, even for a specific plane, there are variants because it changed over time. So I decided I was going to go with the RL201, the first one that was rolled off the tarmac and painted as it was first rolled off the tarmac. So the 201 was very simple. There was no reds and things like that. There was just a little bit of color. And luckily, and one reason I chose that particular version of the plane was there's at least one highly detailed picture online where you can really see, exactly where, the paint went. So I went with that. One thing I wanted to do, well, what I will be doing and I want to still do is get the panel line accents. Now, unfortunately, I went with a matte white when I painted it. So, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to put a gloss on it, a pledge or a future, if you want to call it that by the old name, and then let that dry and then go for the panel line accents and then finally the decals at the end. Now, it's not the best option. I should have really painted this with a gloss. It would have been much, easier to do in one way. And also there was, less risk of, when you have the gloss to clean off the panel line accent when you let it dry for a while and then clean up the rest so that it only stays in the panel line. So anyhow, at least we're getting there. A few other things I got to do is do some panel line accents in the back by the engines over here, and very minor things. Now, one thing about the panel line accents, I try to mimic, and there are some lines on the cockpit here, the front, because again, these open up in a swinging way, but the it was incomplete. These, like, some of these lines just ended in the air. They were not correct, and they weren't really etched in all the way. So by hand, I took a scriber and I made those lines, but I'm not perfect, so I'm worried that if I do the panel line accent on this, it'll go into the little cracks I had along the way, and I may not be able to take that out afterwards. So I don't know if I'm gonna panel line accent the cockpit front here. I might try either a fine pencil where I'll have complete control, or maybe just leave it like that, because these are supposed to be very fine lines anyhow, because they really opened up. They're not real, lines like on the plane, the larger ones. So hopefully I get, done with the rest. My biggest worry right now is, again, doing that panel line accent and not having it, making it dirty when exactly, the plane was really pristine at this stage. And then putting on the decals, where there's one large decal that goes over here, and I've heard people have issues with that decal getting on correctly. So hopefully, with all this work I've put in, I won't have that issue. Okay, so I've given a few coats of pledge. I think I actually did 3 coats just to make sure I had good coverage of the pledge future, and let that dry at least 24 hours. And I was still worried about doing the panel line accents over here, but I did a little trial over here, and I want to show what it looks like right now, and it really pops beautifully. And you can see more or less how I did one side over here, and actually not finished, because there were some places where I went a little light on it, and I can go back and put a little more and then clean it up. And basically, it's, you put the panel line accent. What I'm doing right now is waiting about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and let that dry just a little bit, and then I'm going in with the mineral spirits over here to with a fine Q-tip, and just going in and wiping it off. Try to go at a 45-degree angle so that you're not wiping off in the channels themselves, and slowly wiping it off, and it's coming out really nice. If anything, because it's a complete black panel line accent color on a white, it's a high contrast. It would have been probably better if I had a little lighter. There are some grays, and there are other panel line colors, but again, I only had the black, and that's fine. Like I said, I like the fact that I see all that detail, and I'm happy with it. So just got to finish that, and then after that, the next phase will be the decals. All right, I'm calling this one done. It's done, but I had a lot of issues at the end. First of all, the panel lines, as you saw before, they're kind of dark. I regret that I only had the black, but I still prefer it better than nothing, not seeing any lines at all. But I had a lot of issues where some of the lines, the scribed lines in the mold itself, were really not that deep. Here's an example over here where you can see it was a real struggle to get that panel line to stay and not completely rub off every time I went in to clean it. So not the best. I noticed that places where I scribed lines, because as I was building it, when there was a line that I knew that was going to be a panel line, I would go in and scribe it if I can, just a little deeper to make sure it was deep enough to take the panel line. And those lines are a lot better. So the places where I couldn't do it, like those little round holes and things like that, I just couldn't get in there, and I'd ruin it if I tried. So they kind of look murky, but it is what it is. Now the decals. Oh, that was a huge story. So again, with an old kit like this, you always worry about the decals. And I looked at them and they looked fine, but I says I'll only know when I do try to put them on. And given that, I tried to put on these thick lines that go off the top of the wing over here. It's an intricate pattern. As you can see, this is all one piece, but I said, let me, first of all, break it up into smaller pieces, and let me try with that triangle, because that's one big sheet of one decal. And as soon as I, took it out, it started shattering on me. So again, I was despondent, saying, maybe all these decals are gonna die on me, and I really, it's just not the same plane with all those decals. But I went in and I used, the liquid decal film and put them on all the decals that I know I would need for my particular version over here. And they pretty much held out, but there were some weird things going on with this thing over here. In one case, one of the rondelles over here, which is now on the other side, I noticed as I was putting this film, it was starting to scratch, and some of the blue was, starting to peel off. So I stopped that. There was enough, film on it, so I didn't have to worry about it. But I had to be careful, basically applying it. And later on, I didn't see that effect, but I saw another really weird effect where, these two red and blue uh, rectangles that make up a sign over here, on one of those, the red started bleeding out. It was like it was losing its color. Now, luckily, it's something that you cut off around the edges anyhow, so you don't see any of that bleed off. But it was really, really strange. I've never seen it with the liquid decal, the film. But other than that, the film really did its job, and I took my time. It took forever, but I got all the decals I wanted. And I guess I was basing it on that one high def reference photo I had. Now, another big problem with these decals is they are vastly oversized. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Like those numbers are supposed to be a lot smaller over here. And on top of the cockpit, you're supposed to put these, triangles. And again, they're really, really oversized. So I said, I'm not going to put them, even though in my version they were there. So I just opted not to put them. And the funny thing about this kit and the decals is this is a pre 2000 kit, and I know that the Hobbycraft later came out with another version where they redid the decals. Now you can see over here on some of the versions of the plane, they had the old, Canada flag, pre Maple Leaf, because this was pre 1967. And what they do with these decals is they actually have two layers where they weren't using multicolors or to a degree there was some multicolor, but like this Union Jack that goes in the corner of that Canada flag, you'd have to put this piece and then that piece. And then I saw somebody else had a version where they actually had three layers for that flag, because there's supposed to be like a little orange in there, and they actually had to put one piece, then that piece, and then another piece. But anyhow, I didn't have this problem because this old flag does not go on my particular aircraft, based on what was rolled out that day, the first time around to the public. So other than that, minor issue getting some of the wheel covers in there, a little tight fit, but again, nothing you can't solve yourself. And I like the kit. It came out pretty good. Better than I was. I was worried it would be a real total flop, and it's not. As you can see, it is really a nice kit over here. So I'm glad I built it and completed it. November 11, 2024, Remembrance Day. So kind of fortuitous on that occasion. And again, I'd like to build another one maybe one day, maybe the larger 1/48 scale if I can get my hands on one. But you can see this one's already fairly large. So Again, if you can get your hands on this kit, it's not that bad a kit. I make fun of Hobbycraft, but it's a decent kit. So hope you enjoyed it. Beauty shots to come later, and the next kit I will be building will be a car. That's all I'm gonna say.